You've clearly spent enough time learning Portuguese, but where's the speaking to prove it? I don't want to hear anyone else complaining about not being able to speak Portuguese yet, nor say they can't find speaking opportunities. Enough is enough, because today I'm going to share 12 ideas of how you can get speaking practice for free, as in not having to pay for specifically for conversation practice. Olá, sou Catarina, I'm Portuguese and I've learned a dozen other languages, and the ones I can actually hold a conversation in is because other than studying how the language works, I got very creative on how to find speaking opportunities. So ready to have real conversations in Portuguese? Before I start, I would like to say there's no perfect moment to start. You need to feel when you're ready to make the jump mentally, not linguistically, okay? So it's not so much about how much you know the language, but more if you dare to do it. Although, of course, knowing some of the basics makes perfect sense. I personally sought out conversation practice in Dutch after 2 months of lessons. But this was my 6th language, and vocabulary-wise, not a very difficult one for me. Also, it's probably wise to clarify that by speaking, I'm actually talking about conversation practice, which naturally also implies listening comprehension. And who you are talking to may very well play a role as to how fluid the conversation is going to go. I know that when I moved to Poland, I always had more trouble understanding men. It probably didn't help that the moment I moved to Wrocław, or I addressed the taxi driver by pani, Mrs., instead of pan, Mr. It was a man, by the way. A little trauma that left a mark. Oh well. Now, the first idea is searching online for Time Out magazine, followed by Lisbon or Porto, or look up Agenda Cultural and your city name. This will give you a list of events, places to visit, things to do around you. If you happen to live in a smaller town, check the Junta de Freguesia, the main cafe or supermarket, since posters are bound to be announcing local events. Mind you, this doesn't mean you will have conversations left and right, but it will help you get out of the house and be surrounded by Portuguese people. Sort of like getting you in the mood for doing something that is good for you. Now, I remember in Amsterdam when in the first few weeks I was doing all the touristic attractions, museums and stuff, until I ended up, quite by chance, in a museum that was packed with Dutch people. I think I was the only tourist because I was the shortest person around. And I got to eavesdrop on some conversations and thus work on my listening comprehension. Stress-free. This should be obvious, but if you want to have a conversation in a new language, you need to start with listening. The speaking will come. But if you start with speaking, you will not be having a dialogue, but a monologue instead. The second thing is one of my favorites, which is to go to your local library. Librarians are the biggest advocates probably for their own language, sometimes uncomfortable speaking English, depends where you are, of course, but which is great for your Portuguese. They will have more time than shopkeepers, and you can strike a conversation by asking for book recommendations, or where is this book or that book, and maybe I'm lucky, but the librarians at our local library are super friendly. One of them even helped me make a video a while ago for the channel. I'll leave a link in the description for you to check out if you're interested. Libraries also have a board with events taking place either at the library itself or in the local town. Ask if there's a book club, many of them do, and whether you can attend, sometimes even via Zoom or so, and simply listen. Because you're not fully able to discuss a book in Portuguese yet, maybe you are, but you would profit from the listening exposure. And once you're there, you might get the courage to share your opinion about the book, even just I like it or I don't like it. Or how about attending a story reading time for 4 years old on a Saturday morning? I'm just saying, it's an option. Now, you will be surprised by my next suggestion. I actually came across it by mistake. I wanted to download my water bill from my email, but accidentally I downloaded the second attachment, which I never even noticed why it was there. And once I started reading it, I was like, what is this? Essentially, it was a list of events in the area in the coming month. So unexpected. So again, opportunities for you to mingle. One of my unschoolers had her first conversation while going on a local walk advertised on her water bill. Now, a shop, a small one, either in a big city with no customers or in a small town, also without customers preferably, is the perfect place to have conversation practice, especially in what it comes to asking questions. Places like bulk stores or special items, local items would be perfect actually. And think about it, they need to pay attention to what you're saying, so you'll have to say something. You can easily come up with questions that would apply to any product. Tem something. Quanto é que isto custa? Isto foi feito onde? Isto tem desconto? And depending on the person's friendliness, you can try more personal questions like, are you the owner? Is this a family business? I remember using this technique to inquire about a pair of shoes in Stockholm, which I had no real intention of buying. You know, sometimes you just want another color or so. But it made me feel so proud of myself to use my basic Swedish for a short conversation. Even one of my unschoolers shared last month that she'd had her first conversation at a photo studio that went beyond what she wanted or needed. Now, it sounds like it's a given, but when you move to a new country, you begin to appreciate the art of connecting with people. Okay, this one is something you can do both online or in person, so no excuses if you haven't moved to Portugal yet. Look up workshop or oficina, the actual Portuguese word for it, plus something you're already interested in. Perhaps something you're even an expert in, like knitting, singing, pottery, programming, playing the guitar, cooking, whatever. Make sure it's not a self-paced course alone, where you would only be reading or perhaps listening to Portuguese, which is not bad still. It helps if it's a workshop or course that makes you interact with other people. You could even start with a free webinar. My Instagram account shows me ads for free online events on topics I'm interested in every single day. And what a great way to surround yourself with Portuguese. On a topic you like, use the chat to talk to other participants while on the Zoom, and who knows, even unmute yourself and ask a question. Once an unschooler told me she'd enrolled in a vegan cooking class, and I thought it was a bit odd that she wouldn't know how to cook if she were vegan, because usually if you're vegan, you have to know how to cook. Until she clarified it was a way to immerse herself in the language. Genius, right? Now, actually combining your focus on improving your conversation skills in Portuguese with taking up a new hobby might be a really good idea. So, for instance, I learned how to climb when I moved to the Netherlands, and to this day, do not ask me, as in I need to think really hard, what's the word for rope and harness in English. I had time to check for this. Now, the gatherings after climbing practice were the best because we had time to chat with a small group of new friends. And I did start taking dance classes because it's something I always enjoyed. But I soon realized there was not much opportunity to chat, so certainly not during class, for obvious reasons. And I'm kind of an introvert, so doing it in the changing room didn't work for me either. Now, one interesting option, whether you are young but have mastered a skill or already retired, which hopefully means you have lifetime knowledge of a thing or two, then you can actually teach it. You can start offering a free workshop at your local library. Again, just an example. During our summer retreat last July, one of my unschoolers actually gave a 20-minute long presentation on how to make origamis. I was so impressed and proud of her that I even cried because I was there. I watched her know the basic grammar, yes, the structures of the language, yes, to becoming more and more at ease conversing in Portuguese. Now, next thing on the list is church. Whether you're religious or not, going to church gives you an hour long of listening exposure and lots of conversation opportunity afterwards. In case you're not aware, the Portuguese will gather outside a church after Mass. For some people, it may be their main weekly chance to socialize. Perhaps older people in a smaller town, I don't know. So why not try to blend in? Similarly, going to the market is the perfect way to get you to start talking. True, the supermarket will help you survive, which is great, but without pushing you out of your comfort zone to say much, maybe the market is a better place. Now, a top tip here is go to the market towards closing time, as vendors won't be as busy and thus have more time to engage in a chat with you and maybe sell the leftovers they have. Now, besides churches, cafes are your go-to for conversation practice. You see people there so many times, all day long sometimes, that it seems some customers just live in there. So this is where the Portuguese gets social. In case you didn't know, now you do. If you're still self-conscious, try going to a cafe in another neighborhood or town. But then, of course, you would be missing out on the opportunity of making local friends. My next idea is about volunteering. And it's funny because I hear a lot of people volunteering at animal shelters, which is great, but it might not give you a lot of conversation practice if the animals don't talk back Portuguese at you. So I suggest you think of areas of interest you have and then look up online organizations working on those. Contact them and offer help. I volunteer in one association, and sometimes during meetings I wonder how wonderful it would be for you guys to be present and engage with the language and culture from so close by. And guess what? You don't even have to be in Portugal. Most of my unschoolers have their first freestyle conversation with taxi drivers. By freestyle, I mean unscripted and not with my guidance on the spot. One of them comes to mind who came to me because she always struggled with the listening bit, even though her pronunciation and knowledge of the grammar is top-notch. Chat she had with the taxi driver was a major boost of confidence in her conversation skills because she finally managed to focus on the Queen and understand him. If you never heard me talk about the Queen of Portuguese, not of Portugal, we don't have queens, check this video next. I'll leave the link in the description as well. Now, this one is specifically for people over 50. So search for Universidade Senior to see if there's one close to you. Here, you could do a course and get to know some new people with the same interests. For those of you who haven't moved yet, one thing you can do to get more comfortable speaking is talking to your dog or whatever pet you may have, and they will be great listeners. They won't judge you, and you will become better at the art of conversing. It's implied here you would have to speak for your dog as well, okay? Hence, conversation. Now, this idea is actually from an unschooler of mine who said his father became comfortable speaking in English by chatting with children at the playground. This might not work for everyone, but it might be worth a try. If the child understands you, you know your pronunciation is good. By all means, avoid teenagers so as not to crush your confidence from the get-go. That would not work. And maybe focus on primary school children who love to chat, ask questions and so on. Now, have I forgotten anything? Actually, I have. Before doing any of this, you can start by talking to yourself by imitating native speaker speech. You can check this video next to learn what I'm talking about. Let me know in the comments what other ideas you've tried out to become more comfortable at conversing in Portuguese. Obrigada por verem, obrigada por me ouvirem. Até a próxima.